Phase 7 of Season of Discovery is here, and the damage is about to go off the charts. We're talking absurdly powerful Tier 3 set bonuses, Sanctified gear that scales to insane levels, and game-changing Atiesh buffs that'll blow your mind. So who is on top of the DPS throne this phase? You're gonna want to stick around, because if you sleep on these, you're gonna be left in the dust when everybody else is parsing 40,000 DPS. So let's dive into the official Phase 7 DPS tier list. But before we start, definitely let me know in the comments, which class do you hope ends up on top, and which class do you think needs a massive buff in Phase 7? I'm gonna be reading every single comment. So in the B tier, we've gotta start with the underperformers, and kicking off our B tier is Hunters. The hype was definitely real for the Hunter tier sets, having one for melee hunters, having one for range hunters. And the bonuses are fantastic, reducing the cooldowns of your most important abilities, and giving you massive stacking critical strike bonus. It feels jaw-dropping on paper. But once you crunch the numbers, seeing everybody else getting similar tier set bonuses, and even with that Nerubian slave maker dream, you look at the sims for hunters in the endgame, they're lagging behind the top specs by over 6,000 DPS. If you're a hunter main, or you have a hunter ult like I do, it's gonna be a tough pill to swallow. But at least you'll always have kill shot and the very fun rotation to deal with. I would love to hear from hunters, considering you don't have a tank spec, a heal spec. Are you outraged you're not gonna be doing more damage this phase? Or are you still planning to have as much fun as possible anyways? Definitely give me your take in the comments. We've also got to talk enhanced shamans, and for enhanced shaman mains, I've got some good news and some okay news. The good news is early in Phase 7, you're going to be one of the very best classes. You've got your undead slaying set, you've got your massive totem weapon with a 4.0 attack speed, and it just screams, I'm about to wreck something. The meh, though, is that even with a giant tree as a weapon and those sweet tier bonuses, your overall raid DPS is still going to be significantly behind the top contenders. But who cares if you're not number 1 DPS in raids, because as a shaman, you are the most desirable, the strongest class in any dungeon. That's gotta be half the fun, right? Enhanced shamans, though, how do you feel about bridging the gap in the raid DPS? Or are you all about shock and awe on those big 5-mans? We also can't forget Shadow Priests, and Shadow Priests are the kings of long fights, at least in early Phase 7. Mind Flay, Mind Blast, Mind Spike, they've replaced that old dot style, giving you the burst that we always dreamed about. The big disclaimer, though, even with a different rotation, they're still tapering off by the end game. On the brighter side, though, Shadow Priests, they still have that insane utility, the mana regen, the off heals, the sweet raid support. So while they're not scorching the meters at the finish line, they're still a very solid pick if you want some damage and some amazing support. Do you guys think that Shadow Priests need a final scaling boost, or is their utility enough to keep them more than raid worthy? Sound off. Let's move into the A tier now, the serious contenders. Starting off, we've got Warlock, and yes, they had a very promising Phase 6. They're looking even better in Phase 7, starting it off as well with their undead slaying set, the Karazhan gear. In the opening weeks, when progression really matters and getting through those long fights is of the utmost importance, that's where the Warlocks are going to be at their best. Later on, when you have your Atiesh, your full Tier 3 with your set bonus that makes Curse of Agony last forever, that's actually where you're not going to be at your best. Another thing about Warlocks as well is in the true endgame, when everybody has their bis, I would definitely recommend going Affliction, because that's the spec that seems to do the best on those super long fights. Just don't expect to dominate on fights like Fairlina. What do you Warlocks think about the borrowed power meta we're going to be having? Are you riding the hype, or are you going to be crying in the corner? Also in the A tier, we've got those Ellie Shamans, and they are just ridiculously fun early on. Easy gear, huge haste stats from new items, infinite mana, what is not to love? You're going to be seeing them pump out nasty damage well before anybody else has their bis. But once everybody's geared up, once those pharaohs have their full bis, Ellie does start to lose that top slot. Still, if you want to jump into Phase 7 and have fun right away, Ellie Shaman is going to be a fantastic option. Ellie mains, do you disagree with my take? Do you think you're going to be able to hold up and keep up with all those big warriors and pharaohs in the endgame? Or are you focused on that early game dominance? Moving on to Boomkins now. Boomkins were definitely the undisputed Phase 6 gods, but in Phase 7, they are just not quite number 1. Don't get me wrong, Atiesh, the reworked Dreamwalker sets, you finally get your own tier set. The 10-second Starfall cooldown from Star Surge resets. You're gonna be shredding trash and holding your own on bosses too. But eventually, the usual suspects with their crazy Sanctified gear scaling, they're gonna push you off the top pedestal. So are Boomkins still the top AoE class by far, or are they overshadowed by some new top dogs? Comment below. We've also got to talk Red Paladins, and they are coming in hot at the start of Phase 7. They're gonna absolutely smash early next Karazhan Crypts with their crazy eye damage. They might not scale as brutally as Warriors, but if you want to flex in the early weeks, especially if you're looking for a very high priority Ashbringer, Red Paladin is definitely your move. By the late game, you might flip a bit, but you're always going to have incredibly high utility and, of course, style as well. Philosophical question, is it worth dominating early and then coasting? Or do you want to be strong? Do you want to get buffed for the end of the phase? Moving into Rogues, Rogues are the definition of consistent in Phase 7. You can go Saber Slash, Mutilate, or some other wild build and still do extremely competitive damage. Early on with your Karazhan Crypts gear, your Undead Slaying set, you're definitely going to be blasting. Then by the time you have your new tier gear, your new insanely good weapon upgrades like Claw of the Frostworm, you're still going to be near the top, just below the god classes. Ultimately, Rogues are still Rogues, and they bring incredible utility and damage, especially in places like Karazhan Crypts, even if nobody plays Tank Rogue anymore. Plus, if you want to get that iconic Sword of a Thousand Truths moment, you better believe it's out there. Just don't let Cartman down. So Rogues, what build do you plan on running in Phase 7? You going Saber Slash or Mutilate? Let me know. So we've got to talk S tier, the absolute monsters of Phase 7. Leading the S tier, we've got those mages. Now yes, with all the catch-up gear, they start out a little bit underwhelming, but watch out when they get their hands on Atiesh, their Tier 3 Zet bonuses. And they've got absolutely stupid levels of haste from gear. Mages go from 0 to hero faster than you can blink. Endgame too, they're dropping nukes on the meters. If you've ever wanted to see fire mages blast out truly demonic damage, Phase 7 is your time. Do you guys think mages are going to be too broken once they're fully geared? I want your hot takes in the comments, but no pun intended. We've also got to talk Warriors, and brace yourselves, Warriors just exploded back onto the scene after a somewhat rough Phase 6. Thanks now to their insane haste scaling, the new Dreadnought set perks, the big hitting weapons like Corrupted Ashbringer, Warriors are truly a force of nature. With all your haste too, you've got more attacks, that means more rage and more smash. Sure, you are going to need a lot of gear, but once it's in hand, good luck to everybody else. Warrior mains, did you endure the pain of Phase 6 just to reign in Phase 7? Tell me your ultimate redemption story. So at number 1 in the S tier, the surprise contender, it's Feral Druids. Finally, they get a real tier set of their own, and it is a ridiculous one. Throw in monstrous new weapons for an extra 2k DPS, and you've definitely got a juggernaut. If this turns out to be the final balancing patch of Season of Discovery, Ferals might be walking away with the ultimate W. Congratulations, kiddies, you've earned it. So Feral fans, do you think this is going to be your final form, or do you smell some nerfs incoming? So there you have it, the ultimate definitive Phase 7 DPS tier list. From hunters just trying to stay afloat, to warriors and ferals dominating the endgame, it is gonna get wild out there. If you agree or you're furious with the rankings, let me know in the comments. I want your spiciest takes. Hit like if you enjoyed this video and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss my ultimate Phase 7 content. Whether we're talking raids or looking for crazy broken strategies, you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the top of the meters.